really rich. So you should read this, what was going on. So when he said what was happening between 1968 and 1972, just a very small tidbit. And remember, Wikipedia doesn't capture all of it. So what is written is probably only 2% of what was actually going on. But just read this. I will give everyone a couple of minutes. Just reading this will give you so much idea that how that system was manipulated by one country. Okay, and read what all America was doing. So America was imposing import duties. So now today America says we are for free trade and all that, but they were the ones who imposed import duties when it suited them. So every country does what suits them, and the countries that they don't do what suits them are weak. Any questions?
So Nishant, probably I have one question. I'm not sure whether others are understanding it or not. I know this, but I am asking this on behalf of everyone, that why we are discussing the history, all this, when we are, in the current times. I mean, I know the answer, but I want you to answer this for everyone's understanding.
Okay, so maybe before I answer, maybe somebody else should answer.
At least for me, it's give me like a eye opener concepts. What are the possibilities which has done in the past? So such measures can be implemented by government also now for the in order to overcome the crisis what in India or anything. So it's eye opener for me. So in order to know what can be done, it's also good to know what has done in the past. So learning from the past is also good.
Okay. Okay. See, basically, the reason we are talking about all this is to make people understand. See, in my conversations with a lot of people, even in the finance industry, a lot of people say, "Arey, we are backed by gold." And then I have to give them a 1 hour or 2 hour lecture saying there is no more gold standard. So that is one of the reasons I felt it is important for people to understand. So if that is the state in the financial industry, and that's where most of my friends and colleagues are, because I have spent most of my life or all my life in that industry. So it is my assumption that a majority of the other people who work in other industries have absolutely no idea that there is no more gold standard. So that was one of the key things to make people understand, and then also to help people understand what is a fiat currency, what is a freely floating currency, what is a partially floating currency, and what is a pegged currency. So these are concepts that came in after 1971. So talking about those things. So that was the key objective. Nimit, maybe if you want to add something, or
Yeah,
Deepti, if
sure.
you want to add something.
Sure. From my perspective, what I believe is that to understand any underlying concept, you need to understand where it was incepted and how it was incepted and how it has changed over the period of time. Then only you will be able to understand what is going around. I mean, today we say that the dollar is so so powerful. Why it is so? Only if we're going to know this history, we're going to know that why dollar was so powerful and why it is still being so powerful, why Indian rupees is not so powerful or why something else, right? So to understand that why, we need to go into the history to understand from where these things got incepted and how things got changed and modified over the course of period and where we are sitting today. Then only you are going to have a complete understanding of what's going around. Otherwise, if we are only talking about specific time in the history or specific time in current time, we are only doing the superficial job. And that's where I was coming back to again and again, this monetary system. To understand this whole monetary system, we need to understand from where it is incepted and how it has changed over the period of time and where we are today, and how it will going to play out in future as well. So from my perspective, it is really, really important to understand the inception and how it turned out in the history for anything, be it monetary system, be it political system, be it anything. It is very, or religious as well, religious system as well. It is very important if we understand where it is incepted, how it got manipulated and changed in the course of history, and where we are sitting today. And based on these three understanding, we can understand what is the future course and what is the future path. So yeah, that's all from my side.
Thanks, Nimit. Anyone else wants to add something? Ishwar, Dipti, Vaibhav, Siddharth, Kunal. No? Okay. So we will move on. So then we are in 1971, post 1971. So there is no more gold standard. Countries can print as much as they want. So countries follow different methodologies. So I will first talk about the methodology called as freely floating. So a freely floating currency is basically the market forces decide how much the currency will be worth. So for example, Japan and US both went to a freely floating currency, which means based on the demand and supply of dollar and yen, it will be decided how much is $1 worth. So say as on 1st of December, 1st of January 1972, $1 is equal to 50 JPY. Now if the demand for dollar goes up, $1 will become 60 JPY, 70 JPY, 80 JPY, so on and so forth. If the demand of dollar goes down, $1 will become 40 JPY, 30 JPY, so on and so forth. Is this clear to everyone? Yes.
Yes, it's good.
Yes.
Okay. So then when US and Japan entered into this kind of agreement, obviously other countries also did it. So US, Japan became free floating. So Japan and Deutsche Mark also became free floating, so on and so forth. Then the second option was to peg it. So peg it means give it a small range, but kind of fix it, but not fully fix it. So China kind of followed this, where they said 1 USD is equal to 7 CNY, which is the Chinese yen, yuan, or the renminbi as they call their currency. So they fixed it at 7, but every day it can move up 1 or 2%. So, or 1% up or down. So 7 can become 7.07 or 6.93. Only that much is allowed. If there is more than that, the government will intervene. That becomes known as a peg with partially floating, you can say, but yeah, mostly peg with some controls. Peg would be much more fixed. So I would say fixed for that. So that is known as currency pegging. The third one will be fixed. $1 is equal to 5 Saudi riyal. So Saudi, Qatar, a lot of these countries did like that. Or 1 Saudi riyal is equal to $2, whatever. They fixed it. And they will not allow to move at all. And whatever is needed by the central bank, they will do it to keep that rate fixed. It is very stable. The fourth is similar to pegging, where basically you allow to partially float. It is not fully floatable, so there will be some kind of government control, but not a lot. So it will not be fully market forces, not fully controlled by government, somewhere in between. So these were the 4 options. Okay. So this kind of covers the whole currency situation in today's world. And in today's world, we have a combination of all of these. So like, for example, a JPY, they say that USD JPY is fully floating, but not in reality, because Japan always tries to keep its currency low enough so that it can help its exporters. Because the more Japan exports, the better it is for their economy. So USD JPY was at 70 odd 7-8 years ago somewhere. You can pull up the chart. and today it is at 120, 125, or how much was it, 105 something, but they let it depreciate till 120. How this is done is, whenever there is an export order, say Japan exports something worth $10 billion to some company in US, that company pays $10 billion to the Japanese exporter. That exporter then goes and deposits that $10 billion with the Bank of Japan and takes an equivalent amount of JPY from the Bank of Japan. Say the exchange rate is 1:100. So for $1, 100 JPY. Now, if, for example, suddenly there is a lot of dollars in the market, so Japan starts export a lot, there will be a lot of dollars flooding in the Japanese market. Now, what happens whenever the supply of something goes up? The value of it goes up or down. Supply has gone up, demand is constant. The value of dollar will go up or down in this example. Anyone?
Down.
Down, right? So $1 was 100, it will start to become 90. That is not what the Japanese government wants. So what the Bank of Japan will do is, obviously they say that Bank of Japan is independent, but there is always a lot of government control. So based on the instructions of the government, they will try to manage the supply of dollars in the market. So they will start buying dollars from the market and start flooding the market with JPY. So the more yen they flood in the market and the more dollar they buy, the value of yen will start to drop. So instead of $1 becoming 90, it will start to become 102, 103, 104. And the lower it goes, or more number of yen for dollar, the more good it is for the exporters. Because if an exporter, who's an exporter? He's manufacturing in Japan. So if an exporter, say manufacturing cost is 95 JPY and $1 is 100. So if he sells for $1, he will only make a profit of 5 JPY. But if $1 is 150 JPY, he will still sell for $1 and make a profit of 55 JPY. Because in his home country, he will still pay the salaries, or all the expenses will be in JPY. So that is how a depreciating currency helps any exporter. And that is what I have been saying for India's case, that we should allow our currency to depreciate. So, and I'm not saying big bang, like make $1 is equal to 500 rupees overnight. Slowly, let it depreciate. Let it go to 80, 81, 82, 83. Every week, let it go 1 rupee down.
But Nishant, I have a question. India is also dependent on foreign imports, especially oil. So when we are importing so much foreign goods, eventually inflation will take over, because we are paying more for the goods that we need on a daily basis. In the end, like I think
yes,
the common man will be affected by inflation.
Yes, definitely they will be, but there are other tools at the government's disposal to help the common man. So for example, if you look at our import kitty, so I'm just talking about figures of last year, because this year the numbers are very topsy-turvy. But if you look at our numbers, approximately, okay, I'm just rounding it off for easy calculations. Our exports are about 30 billion, and I'm talking about goods here. In services, we have a surplus, but I'm talking about goods here only. Our exports are about $30 billion, which includes all our raw materials like iron ore, etc. So any kind of goods. And our imports are in the range of $50 billion. Out of those $15 billion, our oil import bill is only $15 to $16 billion. So that is not what I'm targeting. I'm targeting a lot of other imports. So you are right, when the oil import bill goes up, or the cost of oil goes up, so if I let the dollar go to 100, say right now $1 is at 75, so 33% increase in the price of crude oil that we buy, so which would result in 33% increase in the fuel price that the common man has to pay. But then here the government has a lot of tools at its disposal. It can just reduce the taxes that it has on petrol, and we can continue to have the same or even lower prices of fuel. Even with the dollar at 100, we will be benefiting. So that is one great advantage of the way government can play it. Then the question will come that how will the government compensate for this loss of revenue? There are many ways. The government can start selling land. Government of India owns huge amounts of land in this country, huge, millions and millions of acres. So they can start selling the land. They can start by selling the parliament and move away. They don't need to sit in the center of Delhi. There is no rule which says that the parliament should be in the center of Delhi. They could move to a smaller town, cheaper town. They could move to more of the center of India, somewhere in Ujjain or something, buy cheaper land, take it on lease. They could do crowdsourcing, ask people to fund the government, put a wealth tax, which I have been so let Mr. Ambani pay any wealth above $1 billion, have a 30% wealth tax. So just Mr. Ambani will end up paying $18 billion, and you could get so much more money from other sources. So there are multiple ways to raise revenues. So if there is a will, there is a way. The other than oil imports, which is a necessity, $15-16 billion worth of per month. And in fact, there are a lot of reports that there is a lot of oil in India which has not been discovered properly because of vested interest as well. So that is oil is one. So I did I answer your question, Ishwar?
Yeah, mostly you've answered the question. So basically, it will be an adjustment of our internal revenue to compensate, to subsidize these higher prices.
No, there is no need to subsidize. I'm not even talking about subsidies. Just remove the taxes. Subsidies are like artificially lowering. We pay market rates, but just remove the taxes, both state and central taxes, and find other sources of revenue.
Okay, thanks.
But just the depreciation in our currency, how far is it helpful to increase our exports? Because import duty plays a major impact, or the regulation in the country we are exporting to. That is, I think, more important than how much our currency is worth when compared to their currency. Am I wrong?
So there are no import duties today, Deepti. So ideally today, because of the WTO, most countries cannot have import duties because it's a free trade. So if say Germany says that imports from India will be taxed at 50%, then we will also start taxing German exports. So except very generally, the only way the game is played is through quality standards, saying they are not meeting our quality standards. But other than that, it's all a game of exchange rate. So for example, like I explained, if the cost of manufacturing in India is 70 rupees and $1 is 75, I'm only making a profit of 5 rupees. So it's not so profitable for me. But if $1 is 100 and cost of manufacturing remains at 70, it's a good 40% profit for me. Or let me reverse it. Say cost of manufacturing is 80 and $1 is 75. I'm selling at a loss. So nobody will sell. But cost of manufacturing stays at 80 and $1 is 100. Everybody wants to sell. And we have seen in India with PPE kits, people are making 5 lakh kits a day now. So things can change very fast. And I'm seeing it on the ground. So now everywhere we have masks, it's flooded. So if you want how many masks, which variety of mask you tell me, in Bangalore I can get you 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, how many masks you want. So the market is flooded. So in 3 months we were able to adapt. So the businesses will adapt, but we need to fix our structures, which is one, our currency rates, two, the way our babus work. So all of those things, if we fix, we can be a great exporting powerhouse, because we have this surplus labor lying in our villages. And if you just go outside our cities, just outside Bangalore, north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, in all the 8 directions, you go 50 kilometers out of Bangalore, there is millions of acres of land available, and nobody is ready to do anything with that. But everybody wants to stay in Bangalore. So that is not how economies are built. You have to diversify. You have to use all the resources at your disposal.
Okay.
I have a question now.
Yeah, sure.
So if the rupee depreciates, right? Say a domestic company has taken loans from another foreign institution, right? So that'll affect the servicing rate of the loan, right? It'll become more expensive for them, right? So Indian companies cannot leverage the interest rate that is nearing zero around the world, right? I mean, that'll be a problem, would it?
Yes, but we don't want foreign loans, right? So our interest loans itself, see, the companies that operate in India also operate in the Indian context, right? So anyways, not just one company, everybody is borrowing at Indian market rates, except a few very large corporates. Nobody has access to the international market any which ways. So in fact, it is giving them an unfair advantage, which will be taken away. And when we start opening up, right, and when we start integrating more with the global market in a true sense, our interest rates will also go to zero. So our savings, current, all of these interest rates will go to zero. Current is already zero, but your savings, recurring deposit, everything will go to zero. So people will be forced to invest in the market. because people will have to find more productive ways to use their money, or they can keep it inside their mats and pillows like the Japanese do, or keep it in the banks for getting nothing.
India is a saving culture economy, right? So we save here a lot. I don't think the interest rates will go down so low. I mean, the whole cultural effect on it will be large. That's what I feel. I don't know.
No, but see, the savings has got nothing to do with interest rates, right? So if people save, how do you deploy the savings? So I'm not saying don't save. You earn 1 lakh a month, save 50,000. But instead of putting it in a savings account, put it in a stock now. You're just redeploying your money somewhere else.
Yeah, but then there is the risk association with investing in equity versus investing the money in a savings account, right? So that is what the Indian mentality is all about, right?
Yeah, not everybody likes risk. Yeah.
No, I think the cause and effect are confused. Just because people save won't impact the savings rate. If the savings rate is very low, then people will stop saving so much and maybe they'll spend. So the cause and effect are interchanged.
Okay.
Yeah, that is also possible. Maybe savings rate is low, people may start spending more, but that is good for your consumer economy, right? Higher demand, higher production, your economy will grow anyways. And also people have to understand that if a lot of people in India say we want an American economy, but you want an American economy, you have to become like American. You have to become more risk taking. SEBI has to allow loss making companies to list, have an IPO. So for example, today Swiggy had an IPO for say $10 billion. People will invest, but SEBI doesn't allow it because a loss making company in India cannot go for an IPO. So the only way Swiggy can list is it has to go and list on a NASDAQ. So you have to change behavior patterns. And
that
we don't
can
know
happen only when there's financial literacy in the country, right? When financial literacy improves, only then people will start investing in loss-making companies also, right? Otherwise,
so that will happen, right? See, look at 3 months of lockdown, right? Look at this one event, the Black Swan of Nassim Nicholas Tayeb, as he says it, right? And all of you should read that book, The Black Swan. It's a really good book.
Read it.
It is based on his experiences in Lebanon. So people said the civil war will end in 6 months, and it continued for 30 years. So basically, the Black Swan event of COVID.
Hey Nishant, we lost you. Are you speaking on mute?
Yeah,
I can't hear Nishant.
Again and again. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, good now.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, if you see in India, or I think globally, now there are online classes for kids. Who had imagined it? A lot of us. So I had never imagined that 3 months I won't go to office. So the last time I went to office was March 12th. First month I was almost going crazy. Okay, I was having depression or all kinds of attacks. And then I started this group and all. So I started it on 8th of April, and it just started with a fluke, with a phone call from Saurav Chaudhary. And actually I saw something somewhere and he said, okay, let's do a Facebook live session and all. So then this started taking some of my time, and I actually didn't even have a project at that time. So I was like really free. I spent a month studying cloud AWS certified solutions architect associate, which I have lost interest now. But I kind of studied that. I spent 200 hours or so studying that. So yeah, so people adapt. We should not forget the ability of people to adapt. We have to steer people in a direction where we want to take our economy. In India, unfortunately, over the last 15, 20 years, or even much longer, but let's take, if you want to talk about the last 100 years, I can do that. But let's talk about only the last 30 years. After we had this, the great credit of Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao, which I don't credit them, but anyways, let's give them the credit. So when they did these changes, right, our economy started growing from an average of 5 to maybe 6.5%. We can check the data, but in the last 30 years, our CAGR would be around 6 to 6.5% or 7% at max. And that kind of satisfied us. We as a nation have never dreamt big that we could have achieved 11 or maybe 12%. Okay, we always want to compare ourselves with China, but look at China. They didn't win some medals in Olympics, and then they went back to the drawing board and came back and winning 50, 60, 70 gold every Olympics, every time. So they have created that culture. One of my very close friends visited Dalian last year for 3-4 months, and he was so impressed. He said the engineer quality in China is 10 times better than us, and most of them engineers have a CFA degree, which most of the finance professionals in India don't have. and not a CFA level 1, a CFA level 3 qualified. So they are engineers plus the business. The only thing they are lacking is the language. And I have had a personal experience when I was traveling to Paris. Yeah, when I went to Paris itself, I met this group of 70, 80 fairly rich, I'm assuming rich, but yeah, fairly well-to-do Chinese in their 60s or 70s. And they are not, they were not followed, they were followed by one young girl who was in 2021, and she was speaking good English and translating for them. So the young generation in China is speaking English. So that democracy is a joke. Okay, so democracy and communism doesn't matter. What kind of democracy do we have in India? One political party literally ruled this country for still ruling. Somebody came as a daughter-in-law, and the power got handed over. How Sanjay died, how Menka got pushed out. So there are a lot of stories in that. So let's not get into democracy. Democracy doesn't mean that everybody just got a right to vote and they don't know. They vote for a bottle of daru and 5,000 rupees in their account. So we know what kind of joke democracy we have. So let's not dance about the
But
democracy
what I
that we
meant
have.
is like we have a changing government, right? The government can change. So it is very difficult for a previous government that they implemented and for the upcoming government to actually proceed with that and take that forward in the right way, right? Because they have their own interest attached to it. Correct. So that's what I meant by we are a democracy in that sense. And in China, if there is that sort of a thing, then China wouldn't be China today. China is China
No,
today
that's
because of the
not a
big
fair way to
changes,
put
right?
it, right? US is a democracy, right? So it doesn't mean that, see, at a high level, whatever the government of the day decides, the next governments carry it out. So BJP governments have carried out at a high level what the Congress did. In fact, if you look at Modi's history, people thought he's a very right, economically very right. He will do a lot of economic reforms and all, and he has disappointed everyone, including me. He seems to be far more economically left than Nehru. Sometimes I feel the way his economic policies are, they kind of confuse me. So these are all at the highest level, the governments kind of continue what they are, and they have to look at the nation first. Democracy just means that people have a right to change their leaders. It doesn't mean that you don't have a continuation of economic policy. That way, though, the country can never progress. So you will go 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, keep doing topsy-turvy things. So you need to have a focused approach. So for example, why I'm focusing so much on this trade deficit is, if we want a manufacturing capacity, if we want to export to the world, it's a 20-year project. It is not going to happen overnight. You have to put the right policies in place. You have to attract the companies. So for example, let's take mobile. Mobile is what? It is an assembly of thousands of parts. Somebody makes a screen, somebody makes a chip, somebody makes something else. You need to have all of those OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, to be in India. And you need to give them kind of like a SEZ or a business park where there is an ecosystem where they benefit from each other. Like for example, how did Bangalore become the IT hub? Because the ecosystem developed. So what benefit Bangalore had? It had good weather, it had good infrastructure, it had good colleges set up by Nehru. So credit goes to him. So there are things he did well also. So this system was set up, and then when Bangalore started growing, so in electronic city, so it was actually set up to have an electronic manufacturing hub, which we never got to, but we created a service industry. So every economy in the world post the industrial revolution in the 1800s have progressed from agricultural based economy or an agrarian economy to first a manufacturing based economy and then a service based economy, because the high number of jobs needed to employ. क्या खा ले बेटा? पॉपकॉर्न खा लो. पॉपकॉर्न खा ले. अंकल उनको है बोलोगे? नमस्ते कर दो.
अरे हाय, कैसे हो?
हाँ ठीक है, आप खा लो. ओके ठीक है, दे दो लाओ.
हमको भी चाहिए पॉपकॉर्न निशांत.
अरे नहीं, इसने ये मखना दिया है, पापा को पूरा दे देंगे करके. आओ सबको हेलो बोलेगा गुड्डा. आओ वीडियो में करेंगे, हेलो करेंगे, आ जाओ. So yeah, basically where was I? So yeah, we need to put those policies in place. So that's how Bangalore developed, and then now everybody wanted to come to Bangalore, and slowly you have what 400, 500 captives and service center companies here. So it takes time and concentrated effort. Questions, doubts, comments? Over to you guys. I will go on mute for a couple of minutes.
So, just taking back the conversation to the previous point, I'm sorry, but I had some doubts. Nimit, if you could please help me regarding the gold standards. I had some doubts. So, for example, as you told that like the currency was pegged against the gold coins according to the commodity that was available, and then they could be printed accordingly based on the number of amount of gold coins that the economy had, right? So then the economy would run on it, and then but my question is, if the government wanted to increase the notes, for example, if the central bank, they had to increase or decrease the rates based on increasing or decreasing or printing the notes, then how would they do it? Because there is only a certain level of gold that they could have. So then how did they do that?
That was the whole point, not to increase the supply of the monetary instruments in the economy to an extent where it will explode, right? And that's why there was a fixed exchange rate between the gold and the US dollar, and correspondingly US dollar and the other currencies of the world. But that
Okay.
didn't seem to be worked out. Definitely, I mean, we know that didn't work out because with the growing economy and with the debt-based economy, this money instrument needs to be increased every month, year-on-year basis, and that's why it started to fail, and we moved away from this gold standard and the US pegging of the gold.
Okay, makes sense. And in this case, you told that, for example, if the other countries, they gave their currency and then they took gold, and thus America lost a lot of its gold. So I mean, how does that happen? Like, how did the international trade happen back then?
I'm sorry, Vaibhav, your voice was got break in
Yeah, sorry. So I was saying that, for example, when for example, Germany, in that case, they bought I mean, they bought gold and they gave their currency, and thus America lost, like, they the amount of reserves decreased in America, and that's why the government in America panicked, right? So how did that happen?
Yeah, so basically what happened was US dollar was the reserve currency of the world. It means that all the trade that was happening was only in the US dollars. There was no trade happening in any other currency at that point in time, which means that US dollar has too much of power in it, and at the same time US was also the production power, right? They were doing a lot of exports as well. With that, the other countries, because US was the only reserve currency, the other countries started to take a lot of start buying a lot of US dollars to support their trade. And at the same time, what was let's say perceived by the countries of the other countries of the world is that US is even not doing anything. They are just printing the US dollars and they are making a lot of money out of it. So that caused the the low sentiment amongst the different countries of the world. That's why they started to dump out that US dollar to US and asking for the gold back, right? It's a chicken and egg situation for
Okay.
US, because US dollar was the reserved currency, and US dollar was the power house for the production as well at that point in time. So all of the trade was happening in US dollars. So US dollar and nobody can stop US to print any more dollars, right? So basically, the US can do simply the printing of the money and do all this trade in their favor, and that's
But then
what.
how can, yeah, sorry, but how can they print the money if they don't have the gold, like the amount of gold based on that? I mean, for example, if the, like, how can they print the money and give it to other countries when they themselves don't have the gold based, like, to peg that currency on?
Yeah, that's true. That's on papers, right? But practically they can do anything. And that's
Okay.
where this Charles de Gaulle of French Prime Minister, French President at that point in time, he clearly said that we are going to dump all the US dollars back if you keep on doing these kind of things. And then that's where all these sentiments moved towards the US, and this every country started to dump the US dollars in exchange of gold.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Nishant, please, you can continue if you have something.
Other questions, please?
I have another question. It's the same sort of question that I asked, but not in regard to cooperation, but say the Indian government also borrows a lot of money from outside, right? External debt, as they call it. So if the value, if the rupee is depreciated, then it's going to become expensive for the government also, right? So they won't. Would they really depreciate the rupee? I mean, is it going to be an ideal situation for the government to do so?
But why should the Indian government borrow from foreign countries?
No, we already have foreign debt, right? External debt, we already have it. तो अगर रुपी गिर जाएगा, रुपी का भाव गिर जाएगा तो फर्क तो पड़ेगा ही ना गवर्नमेंट को.
नहीं, बट अगर एक्सटर्नल डेट कितना है, अपने पास $500 बिलियन का रिजर्व भी तो है ना. So if external debt is 100 billion, we will just use that reserve to pay it off. Because external debt is in dollars, the reserves are also in dollars. It will net off.
Okay.
And the funny part is that, in fact, there are many people. Yeah, Nimit, I'll speak for a minute and then you can continue. So there are many people in India who didn't want the government of Bharat to actually borrow in foreign currency. We have enough money in this own country floating around. Why should we borrow? And as I said, RBI can print money and
cheap outside.
Yeah, so RBI can take the interest rates to zero and start lending to government of Bharat at 1% or do direct transfers. There are many ways to fund the government.
Hyperinflation will happen. Yeah.
No, why will it happen? That is what I'm saying. This is all a myth, right? US has printed more than $15 trillion in the last 10 years. Where is hyperinflation in the US? If there is no demand, there is no inflation. See, printing money is not a problem in itself. How you use that money is the thing. So what I have been advocating, and I have been writing a lot in Facebook and LinkedIn also, and nobody has till now challenged me with data as to why it is not possible. Say Indian government printed $2 trillion and they invested that to create schools, colleges, medical colleges, wide roads, public housing, and a lot of other stuff. There would not be inflation, right? It would just improve the quality of life of Indians and it will help to skill our workforce to take on the world. If I just print money and give it to everyone for free, yeah, there will be inflation. But I'm not saying that, right? I'm saying put people to work, create industries in villages. So for example, Bangalore has 1 crore population. This population needs to be fed, right? You need vegetables, fruits, etc., etc. Grow it within a 50-kilometer radius of Bangalore or 100-kilometer radius of Bangalore. Develop those villages, fund them, give the farmers credit and all. The reality of India is very complex. The farmer in a small village today borrows at roughly 5% or 10% per month. So for a 1 lakh loan, he ends up paying 10,000 as interest. So if in a year, for a 1 lakh loan, he's paying 1,20,000 as interest and his profit is only 1,50,000, he's paying the interest and using 30,000 to feed himself. This is not a sustainable model. Why not fund those farmers at 1%? So his interest rate is 1,000. Now his profit is 1,50,000. So he's saving 1,49,000. He can repay the principal 50,000 and the rest 99,000 he can use it for his family. That will create demand. And this is the reality of this country. I'm not joking. Go back and check the data. And institutions like NABARD and all have done a very limited difference. They have done some difference, but they haven't reached to all the people. There is a huge unbanked population in this country.
Yeah, and also I would like to add one thing, Siddharth, over here. The external debt is the last thing any country would want, because the external debts are very, very dangerous things. Because when you start taking the external debt from these institutions like IMF and the World Bank, they will, and once you are not able to repay that back, they will start interfering in the internal working of the countries, and which is very, very bad thing. So I am never in favor of taking an external debt for a country. As long as we can meet our needs within the internal debts, and as Nishant mentioned, printing of money is never a problem. I mean, I differ with that somehow, but yeah, external debt is a strict no-no. It's just the last resort. And we can see that what happened at the time of India, when India has to literally, mortgage its gold to these institutions.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
and I'm not sure whether you guys know about it or not. Because of the IMF and the World Bank, Manmohan Singh was made the financial minister at the time of this coalition government back in, I think, 1995 or 99. I don't remember exactly, because they were having that kind of interference in the internal working of India. And Nishant took that point as well. He wanted to give that credit to Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao, but that's truly the credit to IMF, because IMF was behind posting the Manmohan Singh in finance ministry. I don't know whether you guys know about it or not. During those election years, it was very much visible to everybody that whosoever government will win, whether it's a Congress or the coalition government or whosoever, the next finance minister would going to be Manmohan Singh. It was that open at that point in time. And that happened eventually, that Manmohan Singh was became the finance minister at that point in time, and that's where all this the liberal policies of India started to appear up, and the foreign investment started to flow in. I mean, again, all these parameters in history define how and where we are today and why all things happened. And that's why I'm saying that the external debt is never good for a country, because it will lead to the intervention of these foreign institutions into a country's matter, and which is never.
Just look at Greece, right? Just look at Greece. If anyone has a doubt, just look at Greece.
Yeah.
So basically, you said you differ on one point, right? So let's discuss that also. Why printing money is not a good idea when the whole world is doing it, right? Anyone can print it. But I think I had some other question.
Yeah. For me, I mean, going back to the history, I think we can.
No, Nimit, somebody else wanted to ask some other question. Let them ask.
Sure, no worries.
I heard somebody.
Yeah, sorry if I don't know if it was someone else, but I also had a question. My point is that, for example, even if India has a very low interest rate, then what would consequently happen is that the central bank would ultimately ask the other banks to lend it to, so it will increase the liquidity in the market, the credit will increase, but then again, if corruption happens, for example, in the last 10 years, as we've seen, the amount of bad debts that has increased, if that happens and if the productivity is low, then it will ultimately crumble the whole system. So that is why the government is very vigilant in terms of not increasing the infrastructure before, and then you sort of decrease the rate as the infrastructure improves. What do you guys have to say on this?
Nimit, go on. Nimit, can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Yes, you're audible. Yes.
Am I audible, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I completely missed the question. My daughter came in between.
No, you're not.
No, Nimit, we can't hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I will take that up. Vaibhav, what was your question? Sorry, can you just quickly remind me? Vaibhav?
I think Weber was referring to if there is an increased number of NPAs or bad.
Okay, let me just disconnect and reconnect. Okay, I think there is some audio issue. I will just reconnect in 1 second.
That you can, if you have an opinion, you can share.
Yeah, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. Vaibhav, yeah, can you just remind me the question in short?
So the question is basically if the interest rate, if the central bank, if it reduces the interest rate, the rate, so what could potentially happen is that the credit could increase in the country, and if the productivity actually is not equal to the credit that the economy is working on, then there could be a lot of bad debt in the overall in the system, and that could actually
Doesn't matter.
crumble the whole system. So that is why I think that they're not in favor of reducing the rate as fast as in compared to the other economies like America or Europe.
No. So you got that wrong. See, even if there is a lot of bad debt, doesn't matter, right? The whole world is swimming in debt. So there is no problem with that. Corruption is a separate issue and it needs to be tackled in a separate way. Let's not bring economics into that.
No, but
basically,
is debt an issue? Debt is a major issue, right? The whole world is facing the debt crisis also, right? It's an issue. I mean,
no, there is no issue, right? Because nobody is going to ever repay any of that debt. So that is not an issue. That's what I'm saying. So I will explain. So for example,
okay.
So for example, if RBI made interest rates as 0, what we know as the repo rate, and reverse repo as -2, which means if HDFC Bank puts 100 crores with RBI, they have to pay them 2 crore interest to RBI. RBI will not pay them anything. So which means HDFC will not keep its money with RBI and rather use it to lend. And it can also go and borrow another 100 crores from RBI at 0%. Now what this will do is, this will allow HDFC Bank to lend to people at 3%, for example. Home loan, personal loan, car loan, all kinds of loan. This will create a huge demand in the market. When there is demand, there are jobs. When people have jobs, you will have manufacturing capacity. So cars are being made, houses are being made, labor is being employed, so on and so forth. And this is how you generate economic activity in any country.
No, but at the end of the day, the money that is given to the people by the bank is going to be exhausted, because if they are not going to repay back the money, then the whole system is going to disrupt itself.
Correct, Siddharth. Right? So I'm not saying that they should not repay, right? See, don't equate corruption with this. So when HDFC Bank is lending, it will still have its underwriting standards, right? The only thing that is happening is, I spoke about spread a few classes back. So HDFC Bank's cost of funds will go down to 0. So they will add that 3 or 4% spread and lend it at 4%. Now the cost of funds itself for HDFC Bank is 5%. So they lend it at 9%. So that is the only thing that is changing. They will still have the same underwriting standards. They will still check whether you are able to repay the home loan or not. But your eligibility will go up because the interest rate is lower. Let the tenure be 50 years instead of a 30-year tenure. Let people repay it over 50 years. Be more aggressive. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll come on to that, Nishant, and where I differ on that. Debt is. I mean, I know that in current scenario it is being sound like debt is good, but eventually this is creating a bubble, bigger and bigger. So I'll give you an example how it is not good and how it will going to fail at some point in time.
Your point, it is a bubble, but the point is it is too big to fail, right? So for example, as I mentioned, there is something called perpetual bonds, which you never have to repay. So the government of India can issue something called a perpetual bond for say $2 trillion, sell it to RBI and keep paying an interest of 1% every year, or 10 paisa, like Japanese government is paying, or 1 paisa. And all this is bought by RBI. So basically government of India is paying that interest to RBI, which is in itself a branch of the government only. So in effect, it is paying to itself.
Yeah. So basically, let's say that then why we consider Mallya and Nirav Modi as a culprit, right? They are doing the same thing. Right?
Yeah, but they are individuals, right? Individuals cannot do it. Understand? Government is not an individual, right? A government is for the people. So when the government of Bharat takes 2 trillion, they will create public hospitals, right? Where you and me will go for medical. Our kids will study in schools and colleges built by the government of Bharat. Mallya did it for private profit. So there is a big difference between doing it for the society and doing it for yourself.
No, again,
so even in Japan, not any individual can take the money and run away. It is the government of Japan who is doing all these shenanigans.
Okay,
but only with this money, they created all this Shinkansen, the high-speed bullet train that everybody says Japan has. Japan built world-class infrastructure with all this money, with public money only.
Yeah, but for me the fundamental remains same, right? Let's say that the Malia is doing it for his family, then again India is doing for his own country, right? So the doing it for the self purpose has, let's say, various levels. Like say I'm doing it for my family, then there would be another bigger entity like Malia. He's doing it for his own company. Then there would be a bigger entity like a state government. That government is doing for its own city or its own state. And then there is again a bigger entity like the government of India. It's doing for its own country, right?
No, but
But at
again,
the
you are
end of
not
the day,
understanding, right? Malia is not a sovereign, right? A sovereign state is economically, politically, militarily independent. That is the whole concept of the nation state, right? So in this League of Nations that we have around 210 countries, each country is for its own. There is no global order, right? America just decided one day that we are quitting that Paris Agreement. So America is doing all kinds of things. So the point is, the whole concept of this world order works on everyone following the rules. And even if one country, and especially the one who's the most powerful, does not follow, which Americans have not been following ever, then this order doesn't work. So
yeah, okay. I'll come. Okay, I understand that. I'll come on to the another counterpoint is how this will going to sustain, because in the current monetary system, which is debt-based system, the countries has to grow, otherwise they will doomed to fail, right? And to grow, why they need to grow? Because the debt cycle has to continue. But there will definitely going to come a point when there would be no further growth possible, let's say. And once this growth is not possible, the debt cycle will not continue, and then eventually everything will going to start falling.
No, Japan has not grown for 30 years, right? But the debt cycle continues. Japan has not grown for 30 years.
No, they have grown, right? Their GDP is growing, right?
No.
Probably at it's less pace, but it's still growing.
Japan economy is by and large flat.
Let me see the numbers.
So that way, though, then America is doing a great job by taking so much debt, right? I mean,
yeah, they are. So see, understand. First of all, Nimit, one point which you made. Yeah. So let me clarify, right? One point which you made, Nimit, is that in a finite world of limited resources, there cannot be unlimited growth. That is given. So if you look at the GDP per capita of whole of the Western world in a purchasing power parity basis, hasn't grown for the last 20-30 years. The only thing has happened is internally, a lot of their citizens have become poor and few of their citizens have become super rich. But overall, if you look at it, in last 30 years, most of the developed world has not grown their GDP per capita. US grows its economy by 1 or 2% because their population also grows by 1 or 2%. Japan has a falling population. So even with a constant GDP, if a population keeps falling 1%, your GDP per capita keeps going up. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So basically, eventually it means that there is still a growth, right? And again, I'm seeing the numbers. The GDP growth of Japan is constantly between 2% and 1%, just bouncing there from last 10 years.
Yeah, but that is not real growth because they hardly have any inflation and all that. So,
I mean, again, inflation is different and the growth is different.
What I'm trying to say is that growth, Japan hardly has any growth. But say even if they have 1% growth, that hardly matters. So the point is that growth is not debt fueled. So you guys are confusing 3-4 concepts. The debt is because the government is not ready to take the tough measures. So like we were discussing about Japan, right? We had listed down 15 reasons. So one, why they are not increasing income taxes. So there are many ways they can increase. Why they are not increasing sales tax, right? Those two we discussed, right? Let's talk about the third one, wealth tax. Japan can have a wealth tax. US can have a wealth tax, right? That will generate huge amount of revenue for them. Why they are not doing it?
Again, these wealthy people pay these guys during the elections. That's the primary reason.
Exactly, right? So both US and Japan could actually tax the rich, take the money and start paying off the debt. But then the question is for US and Japan, where is the debt from? For US, the debt is bought by China and Japan. Okay, fine. So China decides I want to dump my 3 trillion worth of treasuries. Okay, China will come with a sell order. US government will buy it. The Fed Reserve will buy full 3 trillion. Account में transfer कर देगा Chinese government के लिए 3 trillion. ला, हो गया. See, that is what I'm saying. When you have the printing press with you, your own printing press is buying it. So it is not impacting the public in any way. And then if you guys might be thinking that there is so much money will come to the market. So then there are ways to suck liquidity out of the system. There are a lot of policies that the government can make. So the Federal Reserve can say that US banks, whatever deposit you have, 50% you need to keep at a SLR, which is nothing but a statutory liquidity ratio, which means you cannot lend it and I will not give you any interest on it. But you have to keep it with me. Otherwise तुम्हारा banking license cancel कर देंगे. So liquidity suck हो गया market से. कहानी खत्म.
But then liquidity इतना सकी करना है तो फिर वो लोग इतना छाप ही क्यों रहे हैं पैसा? अब इतना
छाप
पैसा
रहे क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट को देना है ना. छाप इसलिए रहे हैं क्योंकि अगर यूएस गवर्नमेंट को पैसा चाहिए तो यूएस गवर्नमेंट पैसा कैसे लेती है? बॉन्ड इशू करके खरीद लेती है, राइट? लोन लेती है. लोन लेने के पेपर इशू करके उसको हम बॉन्ड बोलते हैं. अब वो पेपर कोई तो खरीदना है, राइट? या तो तुम और मैं खरीदे जो कि अमेरिकन सिटीजन है, या Can you guys hear me?
Like there's a lot of connect. Okay, sorry. Then it's my problem. I'll rejoin. You guys can continue.
I can give an example over here as well. I mean, probably Nishant will differ from that, but I'll give you an example how the current system is working is, let's say that I have a company, okay, and I have an income of 100 rupees, but my debt is, let's say, 200 rupees, and I have many liabilities which I need to pay back, right? Let's say I'm running a bank, right? I have an income of 100 rupees and I have a debt of 200 rupees, and then I have other liabilities as well. So currently my status is I am insolvent, right? In a real world scenario, this company will go bankrupt and then it files for bankruptcy. But if somebody keeps on paying the money to this bank, right? Let's say that there is a fictitious character who keeps on pumping the money in this bank. Then this bank will never go insolvent, right? Because the money is coming, the incoming money is coming from somewhere, and this bank keep on running its business till the time the monies keep on coming. That is what exactly these governments and these printing press are doing. The governments are already in huge debts. They are already in the insolvent state. But this Feds keep on printing the money and then feed on money to these governments. And this cycle has been going from hundreds of years, right? It's not. That's why I'm saying that this bubble is keep on increasing every time. And that's what Nishant said that this is.
नहीं, not hundreds of years, भाई. ये सब World War II के बाद है. World War II में सब clean up हो गया था.
45.
Right. I mean, let's say that's 50 years, right? Not 100 years, 50 years.
75.
नहीं, this is going on, right? I mean, हमने
75 years वही बोल रहा हूँ. 75 years हो गए.
हमने 93 का बबल देखा, 99 का बबल देखा, 2008 का बबल देखा, right? And now we are also seeing another bubble.
वो तो कैपिटलिज्म का रूल है, राइट? वो अलग चीज है, उसको इससे इक्वेट मत करो. कैपिटलिज्म में क्या होता है? जब अच्छा टाइम होता है तो पीपल टेक क्रेजी रिस्क. सो वो क्रेजी रिस्क जब कंट्रोल नहीं होता है तो फटता है. जैसे अभी जो फेड कर रहा है उसका एक्चुअल रिस्क nobody is talking here. What is actually happening is they are printing the money, but how that money is getting distributed is a bigger question. Nobody is checking who's getting the money. So a lot of people are scamming. That is where the problem happens. So although they are eligible for 5 million, people are taking $100 million. I'm talking. That is where the real scam is happening. And Fed is printing because it is scared that the whole economy will collapse, and it would have collapsed. Say, for example, if the US government did nothing in the last 3 months, US economy will be down 50% this year. 50% straight. So 20 trillion economy, 10 trillion. And how will the US allow it? That whole number, economic number is their power, right?
And that's what I'm trying to... Nishan, that's what I'm trying to counter that. Currently, they are looking at this scenario. Their growth will go down. Their economy will go down 50%. But if they keep on printing this money, and then the next time after 5 years or 10 years, this bubble will definitely going to burst. Then they
will not, right? That is what I'm saying. It should, but nobody will allow, right? So ये can छोटा सा था. It was a small problem. They kicked it, saying not my problem. So for example, last time it happened, Bush was the president, right? He said, not my problem, मैं कुछ जुगाड़ लगा के निकल जाऊंगा. फिर तो मैं president नहीं रहूंगा, किसी और का headache रहेगा. He kicked it. Now Trump will do something and he will say, अब मैं तो president नहीं रहूंगा, किसी और का headache रहेगा. 10 years down the line, when it comes, it will become bigger. The point is, these guys will keep kicking it because even the public knows, and the adjustment will happen painfully slow, right? So there will be changes to the society. In the US, there are a lot of voices who have been saying we should start paying down the debt. Okay, but what did Trump do? He comes and gives more tax cuts. So instead of increasing taxes, he reduced them because of his political convenience. So the point is, everybody knows that in the US there is enough money to pay down the debt. The government has to just tap those sources.
No, that's not right. I mean, they cannot go ahead and pay the debts in let's say 10 years as well, because their whole income is, let's say, X rupees and their debt is 3x. There
is not
no
right.
way that...
From where you got this figure of 3x? The US debt to GDP is only 110%, 1.1x.
Let me check that, what it is. For Japan, I think it's 2.5x.
Japan, it's 250%.
Yeah, but for Japan, there is hardly any external debt, right? Zero, in fact. And they actually they are an external creditor. So Japan has bought other countries' debt worth of $3 trillion. And the Japanese government has bought debt, issued debt to its own people. So the people are okay. There are many Japanese dying who are not even taking back the money. So that debt is cancelled actually. The government never has to pay it back. And as I was trying to explain yesterday, right? This is all a zero-sum game. That is where I did not get to. Maybe I will continue tomorrow. But basically, if the Japanese government increase income taxes, the money will come from the people. So instead of increasing income taxes, it is giving them a very, very low rate of interest on their saving and borrowing money from them. So it is either तुम ऐसे पैसा दे दो गवर्नमेंट को या वैसे दे दो. Both ways, एक तरीके से तो देना ही पड़ेगा. Similarly, they are not putting a wealth tax, but rich people, they need to invest their money in riskier assets because बैंक में रखेंगे 100 million, 200 million JPY, कुछ नहीं मिलेगा because interest rate is 10 पैसे. So 100 rupees पे 10 पैसा मिलता है. So 100 million पे 1 million तो छोड़ो, interest will come as 1 lakh. So 100 crore interest is 1 lakh, or 10 crore interest is 1 lakh.
But Nishant, I understand all these aspects, how they are manipulating it, how they are making things.
So they are all interrelated. All I am saying is the public has to pay somehow. See, today in India, our debt to GDP ratio is, our tax to GDP ratio is 20%. So we pay less in taxes, we get less in return from the government. If we compare it to Sweden, some people are here from Sweden or France or any of those Western world countries, the tax to GDP ratio is roughly 50%, be it Belgium, Sweden, all of that. So when the government collects 50% of the GDP in taxes, obviously it has to give everything. India में भी tax 50% कर दो, हमारा GDP करीब $4 trillion के आसपास है. So let the Indian government collect 2 trillion in taxes. देखो फिर सब facility मिलेगा. But the Indian government only collects 800 billion. We are not paying them 1.2 trillion extra.
कर देगी तो सरकार collapse हो जाएगी ना. लोग वोट ही नहीं देंगे, उनका वोट बैंक कम हो जाएगा.
नहीं, वो तो तुम politically अलग मत चले जाओ, but अगर तुम economically बात करोगे, तो if the tax goes up in India to 50%, then government will have
वही हो गया ना, फिर लोगों के पास disposable income कम हो गया, तो खर्चा कम करेंगे. Either way तो government को इफेक्ट कर रहा है.
नहीं, but जनता खर्चा कम करेगी, but government करेगी ना वो खर्चा. Government will see, in any economy there is private expenditure and private consumption and public consumption. So private consumption will go down, as you are rightly saying, but public consumption will go up. So for example, everybody keeps blaming India, saying that our expenditure on healthcare is less than 1% of our GDP. Yes, because if a government is collecting only 20% of your GDP as taxes, how will it spend more? If it spends 10% of GDP on healthcare, which means 50% of government budget is healthcare, where will the money be left for other things? So only if a government collects 50% of GDP in taxes, 10% of GDP can go to public education, 10% of GDP can go to public healthcare, and remaining 30% can go to other things, which currently the government has, like military, etc.
The government is spending on the public expenditure, right? I mean, where they are building hospitals and everything. Now they are building hospitals, understandable, employment rate बढ़ेगा, सब बढ़ेगा. लेकिन अगर public के पास पैसा ही नहीं है इलाज करवाने का, तो वो हॉस्पिटल चलेगा क्या? मतलब बना के क्या फायदा?
When it is public hospital, it means it is paid by your tax dollars, right? When the government is collecting 50% of your income as taxes, then it will give you all those services, right? Based on your tax money, like they do it in Western Europe, in Sweden or in France, where basically then you will be able to walk into any government hospital. So for example, Fortis will become government owned. You will just walk in with your medical card and you will get free treatment, and all your medicines, everything will be covered.
Yeah, but then the issue will be that the government hospitals, everything will be controlled by only one authority, and then the transparency of the system will decrease. That is why
so there's no democracy then, correct? Fair point.
No, it has got nothing to do with democracy. France has this system. So France is not a democracy. Sweden has this system. Are they not a democracy?
Does not have the system of only one hospital, like only one type of hospital. They have private and public, and they have a social healthcare system as well. But so they have like a mixed system. Yes, in that case, yes, India is going towards that. The Ayushman, what was that? The whole insurance scheme.
सिस्टम ओके थोड़ा 30 साल पहले जाओ हम इस सिस्टम में थे
अच्छा ठीक
we
है
all were born in
हाँ
government hospitals there was no concept of private healthcare in India but then we started adopting this American system and you see the American healthcare is one of the worst maximum expenditure and lowest output so when you say that there will be no transparency in fact it is the other way when the government of India is controlling all the medical services it can negotiate much better rates with all these big pharma companies and all for equipment for medicines for everything and in fact with our own prowess in generic medicines we can actually bring down the cost much lower so we may not even need to spend 10% of our GDP on healthcare maybe 5% will be enough but to fund that also government needs see understand the total GDP is 100 government is only collecting 20 अब उस 20 में गवर्नमेंट को सब कुछ चलाना है हेल्थ केयर भी ये भी वो भी तो 20 में 1 रुपया हेल्थ केयर में जा रहा है 1 रुपया एजुकेशन में जा रहा है 2 रुपया मिलिट्री में जा रहा है 4 रुपया गवर्नमेंट सैलरीज में जा रहा है गवर्नमेंट को कई चीजें देखनी है सो ऑल आई एम सेइंग इज कि जब हम इस 20 को 50 कर देंगे लाइक इन वेस्टर्न यूरोप तब हम बोल सकते हैं कि आप हेल्थ केयर पे 7 खर्चा करो आप एजुकेशन पे 8 खर्चा करो तो 15 हुआ फिर भी 35 बचेगा तो मिलिट्री एक्सपेंडिचर भी बढ़ेगा फिर हम उसके बाद अपना खुद का मिलिट्री मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कर सकते हैं सो दिस इज ऑल डिपेंडेंट ऑन हाउ मच टैक्सेस द पब्लिक इज रेडी टू पे एंड some government someday will have to be politically not incorrect to start increasing taxes so like Nimit keeps saying this system is unsustainable but people have made it like that and this will continue so for example after Obama went after the last crisis whenever there are good times the taxes should go up but Trump ने क्या किया आके टैक्स कट दिया क्यों क्योंकि उसके पॉलिटिकल दोस्त थे जिन्होंने उसको फंड किया था तो उसको उनको टैक्स कट देना था राइट तो ये नहीं ये नाटक नहीं चल सकता लेकिन ये चल रहा है ना तो मैं भी नहीं चाहता हूं कि ये चले लेकिन ये चलेगा
what you're saying is a very ideal situation which is highly not plausible right I mean कोई ना कोई किसी ना किसी का तो पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट तो आएगा ही बीच में
हाँ तो that is why the system is collapsing right that like Nimit is saying and like he's fearing that he is being optimistic and I am being pessimistic that I am not saying that the system will change I am like you Siddharth I am not believing that this system is capable of changing but there will be a World War III obviously because when things come to a final frontier वो World War हो जाएगा फिर सब कुछ जीरो से स्टार्ट होगा
बराबर
इसका एंड वही है या तो प्यार से सुधर जाओ बट इंसान को मैंने आज तक प्यार से सुधरते नहीं देखा इंसान ह्यूमन बीइंग्स आर लाइक दैट डॉग्स टेल राइट जब तक लात ना मारो चाटा ना मारो जूता ना मारो सुधरता नहीं है
Yeah, so even I believe that we are not going to get straight without any external push, let's say. But yeah, I mean, for my perspective, this system, this monetary system, the debt-based monetary system, this will definitely going to change in future. So either by hook or crook, it will going to change because it is creating a bigger bubble every time. And this will keep on continuing till the time there is I believe that Nishant will be differing from that there would be a catastrophic failure in future if we just don't
उसका एंड वही है निमित उसका एक ही एंड है वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 और कुछ नहीं वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 में सब सिस्टम वो वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 और 2 भी इसीलिए हुआ था इकोनॉमिक रीजन से वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 भी उसी रीजन से होगा और सारे वार उसीलिए हुए थे महाभारत से लेके कुछ भी चाहे कारण कुछ भी पढ़ाया जाए महाभारत भी वही था ना लड़ाई तो जमीन की थी ना उसको कहानी कुछ भी और बना के दिखाया जाए प्यार से धृतराष्ट्र दे देता आधा राज्य तो नाटक होता ही नहीं
but then I don't think our generation would see that right I mean even if there's a war and there's this whole change going to happen I don't think our generation is going to see that we are just going to be a part of this growing bubble and I don't think it'll burst so soon
right? Sure right so you are predicting in 50 years there will be no World War 3 I am predicting in the next 10 years there should be in fact मैं तो चाहता हूँ कल ही स्टार्ट हो जाए किम जोंग उन और चाइना के दो चार पागल एक जन एक न्यूक्लियर वेपन मारेगा हो जाएगा स्टार्ट और क्या है सी द ओनली रीजन वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 हैज नॉट हैपेंड देयर इज ओनली वन रीजन is because everybody knows that the other side also has nuclear weapon and I can also be destroyed completely correct so the outcome will not be in my favor even if I win I will win what you remove nuclear weapons from the game today tomorrow there will be a World War 3 so that is why today the wars you are seeing are more political more media led and all that like why is America supporting India America is not India's friend but they want China not to get the power So that is why they are supporting all of China's enemies, be it India, be it Taiwan, be it anyone.
Yeah, basically, again, all these are political driven things. Nobody is nobody's friend, as simple as that. Everybody is, befriending with others for their own vested interest. India is also doing the same thing with the US and Russia and France for their own vested interests. वही होता है ना, दुश्मन का दुश्मन मेरा दोस्त वाली बात होती है. That's the only thing happening in the entire world. कि भैया वो उसका दुश्मन है, तो अगर मैं अपना उसको दोस्त बना लूंगा तो I will be able to play some game around it. So it's a bad game, but yeah, that's how things work. अब ये चाइना जो है, why China is tapping Nepal? Because again, Nepal is India's friend, and China want to convert Nepal to enemy of India, so that China can eventually set up their bases in Nepal to attack India very closely.
Near the border, yeah, correct.
Yeah. So all these again, as I've written down it in the WhatsApp comment as well. Somebody very correctly said that you can change your friends, but you cannot change your neighbors. So that's why you always want to be friends with your neighbors. But that won't happen, and then the big powers don't let that happen. China won't let that happen. That Pakistan or Nepal will ever be India's friend because of their own vested interest. But yeah, China has other bad history as well.
Exactly, right? And if China is doing too much natak, we should start talking about Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet. Tibet was anyways never part of China. So we will start talking about Tibet. We will put Dalai Lama on the center stage. With China ki band bajegi.
That
is the problem. Taiwan in the center stage.
That is the problem. India is not doing that, right? And I'm wondering why they are not doing that. I mean, they just promote Taiwan. They just promote Dalai Lama.
Because we are a weak state, yeah. We have always been a weak state, right? Ever since the last 75 years, we have been a weak state. Because we have always had this inferiority complex of the last 1,000 years. So it is going away slowly.
That way, yeah.
It is going away slowly. China, it is not being diplomatic. We are just a weak state. China, for example, is doing what is for them. They are trying to take revenge of their opium wars, right? China was humiliated in the opium wars, and China is saying, I'm back, and to hell with you, Europe and US. I'm going to show you who's the king of the world. India is saying, हाँ ठीक है, तुम लोग करो जो करना है, मैं तो बच्चा हूँ, मैं चुपचाप से रहूँगा. Yeah, but this issue with China will do one thing for sure. It will make a lot of people start watching what they are buying, which I have been doing for many years. So they will start buying at least made in China hai ki made in India hai. A lot of traders may not buy made in China products, and this may encourage local manufacturing.
But that's not going to happen. India is a price sensitive market.
But how it will affect to remove China's apps from our mobile, and it will really effective to damage the China's economy?
Obviously, right? If you start hitting their business, pocket से सब कुछ control है ना भाई. अभी अगर इंडिया में 50 करोड़ लोग टिकटॉक देख रहे डेली, सब छोड़ देंगे टिकटॉक देखना, तो ऑब्वियसली उनका धंधा चौपट हो जाएगा ना.
देखो, I'll tell you, there are the power and money. These are two complementary things. जिसके पास पैसा है उसके पास power है, जिसके पास power है उसके पास पैसा है, right? If you have to hit a country or anybody hard, you just hit on his money, he will lose his power, right? तो पैसे से अगर किसी को भी मारोगे ना, if you hit that guy on his money, he will lose his power automatically, because these two things are very much complementary, power and money. And for China, currently the trade is its biggest power. 2/3 or probably 1/3 of the global trade is being held by China as of today. अगर आप चाइना को ट्रेड पे हिट करोगे तो वो इतना ज्यादा बिल बिलाएगा कि he will not be able to sustain. That's why it's very important.
Other country also has to join the hands, and they have to
they are doing
implement the similar strategies.
Yeah, they are already doing it. Think about Australia, they have already declared it. Think about China, they have already declared it. Not China, Japan, they have already declared it. Western countries are doing it. US is already in trade war with China. Everybody is doing it. It's only Africa which is currently not supporting it because of their own interest, because they are currently very underdeveloped, and China is making a huge investment over there. But apart from that, Australia, India, Europe, USA, everybody is doing that. And that's why the Chinese people, Chinese government is so much of in pressure. Apart from the their own
If you
internal
go
thing.
to
which is going to happen.
Flipkart or Amazon site, if they launch any new mobile, it will be flash out within a second.
Again, that those things needs to be changed, right? I mean, everything cannot be controlled by government. People has to be patriotic enough not to do all these
Actually,
things.
today,
Big things.
yeah. So sorry, Nimit, but actually today itself, Oppo was going to launch their latest phone, and they stopped the launch because they're also scared of the whole, anti-China sentiment now. So
Wow.
this is more of a movement, and over time the companies will also have to change. They will have to change their investments. But if all of, everyone is going to be aware, and if we are going to be same, then only this will happen.
Yeah, and again,
But TV तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा.
Yeah, that's for sure. जो अभी है, if you are already having a Chinese product, if you start bashing it up, it will not going to happen. It will not going to make any difference. Stop buying any new products. Stop using the Chinese applications. Then it will going to help. Again, it's not as simple as we are thinking. That just stopping it, because we don't have an electronic technology in India to sustain the consumer demand. So we need to build that technology, electronic technology within India, so that we will be able to meet the consumer demand. Or let's say that join the hand with Taiwan, because Taiwan is also a very tech savvy, and they are also having a very high end consumer electronics technology. Join hand with Taiwan, bring that technology to India, and then say bye bye to China.
No, but then aren't we stereotyping the whole Chinese people? Like, okay, the Chinese government is doing bad, but say if I'm a manufacturer here in India and I have a supply chain in China also, where I buy some sort of products from a manufacturer there, and I have a good relation with them, right? And they've been the business relation has been there for more than 2 decades or whatever, right? So just because the government is bad, that doesn't mean the Chinese manufacturer who's selling me the product is bad, right? Like,
but at the end of the day, you have to, let's say that कि अगर आपकी if you fight with your neighbor, right? आपके पापा लोगों की fight हो रही है, but बच्चे लोगों आप जाकर के आपस में एक दूसरे के साथ खेलोगे तो how does it sustainable, right? वो नहीं होता ना.
बराबर, हाँ. Point.
So definitely, people, China is very dangerous. People should think about that to ban that Chinese apps and Chinese product.
Again,
Yeah,
the
definitely
banning is different thing, because if government put the bans, it will going to have a repercussions, right? So it is better, rather than government banning things, people boycott things.
Yeah.
So Nimit, I agree with most of your points. I just don't agree with one point, that we may not have the technology.
Mummy.
Technology is easily available with Germany, France, US, everyone. So we just need to create the manufacturing capacity, and our cost of production will be much less than US, Germany. So in fact, we cannot not only manufacture for the large Indian market, but also for Germany, France, Italy, and US. So actually, we could actually tie up. This is a very good opportunity for Indian government to be proactive and reach out to those countries, and they also want to reach out to us because China is in a corner, and we could actually tie up together and create a huge manufacturing capacity. It may take 2-3 years, but seeing the speed at which we were able to create this PPE capacity, I'm amazed. We are doing 5 lakh PPEs per day, and in fact, we are thinking of exports now.
Yeah,
So
Punjab
absolutely.
minister was
Nishan,
saying that.
I was also saying the same thing. When I said we don't have technology, it means that we don't have the technology in-house. We need to import that technology and set up plants or manufacturing hubs in
that,
India
right? Talk to South Korea, talk to Japan, talk to Germany, talk to France, talk to UK, talk to US, talk to Australia. Get it done. It just needs a proactive government and proactive bureaucracy, which unfortunately is the biggest problem that we have. So as I keep saying, we are 140 crore people in this country. Our biggest problem is lack of unity, proactiveness, our own vested interest. We have a lot of internal problems. So before blaming any external threat, we need to fix our own problems.
But
Otherwise, there is
also,
a lot we can do as a nation that China will beg in front of us. They will literally beg, because we can create millions of problems for the Chinese. Starting with Tibet.
Yep. That's right. China has done so much of bad things in past that everybody is now against China except for few. Talk about Tibet, talk about Taiwan, talk about any other. I mean, it's not that that the bad didn't happen with China. I mean, it started with other countries humiliating China and exploiting China, but eventually China turned out to be their boss in humiliating others.
And Siddharth, to answer your question, right, it is not about any country specifically, right? Obviously, every country has good and bad people. Even America has a lot of wonderful people. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with a country, you're dealing with their government and you deal with their policies. So today, people who are dealing with America are dealing with Trump as the president and his White House. So it is up to the American people. Why did they elect Trump? It is up to the Chinese people. Why are they allowing Xi Jinping to remain president? जाओ ना टियनमिन स्क्वायर में जाओ, गन्स लेके मार दो उसको. किया था ना 30 साल पहले प्रो डेमोक्रेसी प्रोटेस्ट. लेट द चाइनीज पीपल फाइट फॉर देयर डेमोक्रेसी. देयर इंटरनल प्रॉब्लम इज नॉट आवर प्रॉब्लम, राइट? पाकिस्तान में क्या सब बुरे हैं? आई वुड से 80% 90% लोग अच्छे हैं, लेकिन जो 10% खराब है उन्होंने इंडिया के साथ ये दुश्मनी पाल रखी है ना. So it is always a small minority that wants the problem. In India, I think 10% people want war with China, war with Pakistan. 10% people in Pakistan want war with India. 90% दोनों तरफ शांति चाहते हैं. But वो 10% पावर में है ना. पाकिस्तान तो बेसिकली मिलिट्री के हाथ में है. मिलिट्री इज हार्डली 3 लाख 5 लाख 5 लाख की मिलिट्री इन अ कंट्री ऑफ 20 करोड़. कितना हो गया पॉपुलेशन? 1% भी नहीं है. बट वो मिलिट्री कभी चाहती नहीं इंडिया के साथ शांति हो, बिकॉज अगर शांति हो गई तो मिलिट्री का अस्तित्व ही खत्म हो जाएगा. So understand, सारा गेम ही वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट है.
पाकिस्तान का तो बिल्कुल ही अलग सिचुएशन है. It is being said that all of the countries in the world have a military, and there is only one military in the world which has a country, which is Pakistan. So basically, Pakistan is being run by their military. It's not the country who's running the military; it's military who's running the country.
But it is not just Pakistan, right? There are many countries which are run by military.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is the fact, right? So you should read how partition was done. So Pakistan, although got only 10% of the population or 15% of the population of the undivided India, they got 30% of the army. So they got a much larger share of the army compared to the population. So that's what changed the game from day one. And in fact, all of you should go and read the buffer theory. Why Pakistan was created as a buffer state between Russia and India.
Buffer theory, okay.
Also, I mean, read about more Pakistan military. So major corporate house in Pakistan are being owned by Pakistan military. So
okay. I didn't know that.
You just go and read that. And also, Pakistani people चाहे भूखे मर रहे हो, but their military is so rich. That's why they are.
वहाँ तो अभी भी जमींदारी सिस्टम है basically. So if you are in a certain state in the Pakistani army, you get 5,000 acre, and there you still have bonded labor. So basically, you own the land and you will have 5,000 laborers, and their kids will be the labor for your kids. So वो generation से चलते रहेगा, and वो पूरा मालिक servant वाला relationship है.
And you know why this ISI, the Pakistan Intelligence Agency, is so good, because they are being funded by the military, and military is the biggest power as well as the money holder in Pakistan.
Military is the only power in Pakistan.
Right. And the biggest money is with the military only in Pakistan.
तारिक फतेह और हसन निसार को सुनो. हसन निसार तो पाकिस्तान में ही रहता है, तारिक फतेह तो छोड़ दिया. Hasan Nisar lives in Pakistan. The way he talks about the Pakistani military.
But then for India to come up now and make the most of this situation, the Union Ministry has to do something, right? It's in their hand, totally correct. I mean, if they want to hold talks with other country governments, it's the Union Ministry that has to do something, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They have to do something. नहीं, they have to do a lot. But ये लोग भी अपना politics छोड़े तब ना. ये तो मेघालय में सरकार चली गई तो बोलेगा अभी उधर पहले पकड़ो, सरकार बचाओ. वही है. But चलो काफी लंबा चल गया discussion, almost 2 घंटे होने वाले.
Yeah, down the line, but the current government doesn't have a think tank actually.
ठीक है.
Not current, even
I will
past
sign
70
out.
years.
If you guys want to continue, okay?
Okay, I'm signing out. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
See you.